everyone! I'm Caitlin Teeter, and on today's Teeter Tales, I'm going to be doing a review of The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic by Jennifer Trafton. This book is a children's to middle grade fantasy novel, and for this review I won't be going into spoilers. You can find specific parts of the review in the description, and let's go ahead and start the review. Begins with Persimmon Smudge, a 10-year-old girl living a simple life on the island at the center of everything. However, things take a turn when she accidentally overhears of a potential plot to undermine the king. Persimmon decides this is her chance to find adventure, so she decides she must stop this plot. What follows is a much bigger adventure than Persimmon had anticipated. The book is a light-hearted fantasy. It also has a lot of comedy, so this isn't a dark or heavy one at all. It's very fun throughout. I decided to read this book because I actually read and loved Trafton's story, The Wooing of Ophelia Stoop, which is in the Wingfeather Saga short story collection. I really liked her writing style, so I decided I would go ahead and check out one of her books, which ended up being The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic. The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic is written in a very similar way to the short story that I read, so I was thrilled with the writing of this book. She has such a hysterical style, as she incorporates clever wordplay like The Liar That Never Lies, and absurdity that plays off as some really good humor. I was frequently reading excerpts of this book to my friends and family. I was just so amused by it that I wanted to share it with them. Trafton also does a great job of making a heartwarming narrative blend well with all the humor. A lot of the characters have their own little story arcs that go well with the writing and the overall story. The book also is able to wax wistful or philosophical at times, with characters discussing what kind of power the word might has, and also pondering how the world can feel so immense and so small at the same time. And I think Trafton balanced these really well without it ever feeling like the humor or the heart was undermining the other. All the characters in this book were really fun and unique and added to the enjoyment of the book. None of them were particularly complex, but they each served their own purpose within the story, and I think that style honestly is better for this type of book. Persimmon is a spirited but likable protagonist. I often find child protagonists can be a bit grating, but Persimmon was great. The side characters are also fantastic. Characters like Warville, Captain Gidding, and Badley all fleshed out the story a lot more and made it more lively. The plot of this book is absurd, but that's a good thing in this instance. Because it's so simple and ridiculous, it works super well with that comedic writing style that Trafton uses. The plot does take several detours and goes in some weird directions, but again, that pairs really nicely with Trafton's writing style, and I often found myself enjoying it most when she let the story go off the rails a bit. The pacing was also well done. It never got slow, and so I was always very engaged, and no characters or places ever wore out their welcome. The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic is a very light-hearted fantasy story, so world building is not very rigorous or intense, which makes it very easy to jump into and understand. Trafton does actually include a glossary in the back of the book in case you need help remembering the names of important places, people, or things, but I never found myself needing it because this book is really easy to keep up with. But I would recommend, if you do finish the book, that you go back and read the glossary once you're done, because Trafton still includes her humor even in the glossary. The book also has a map at the very start, but it really gives more of, I would say, flavor to the story than actually helping you visualize the island as much, because it's supposed to be drawn by Persimmon, so it's very roughly drawn by intention, and you get the sense that nothing is really fleshed out beyond where Persimmon and the main characters actually go, but that makes sense since this is mostly told from the perspective of Persimmon and she's very limited in what she knows about the island. You can also tell Trafton had a lot of fun writing this with absurd creatures like poison-tongued jumping tortoises, more human-like creatures, leaf eaters and rumblebumps, and just generally all the weird and wacky things she throws in. There's not really any problematic content I need to discuss with this book. I think pretty much any age could read it. The only thing I would mention is there is a bit of peril involved, but never really any serious consequences. A tortoise does have its long tongue cut off, but I think that's about it for the violence. Some might object to Persimone's mother being portrayed as really weird and odd, but considering that applies to most characters of the story, and her mother is still clearly very loving of her, I didn't think it was an issue. If anything, this book actually promotes a lot of good traits for kids, such as manners, bravery, and appreciating the differences of others. The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic is a fun book. In fact, this is probably the most fun I've had with a book in a long time. I laughed a lot while reading this book. Trafton's writing is delightful, and I went through this book really quickly because I didn't want to have to stop reading. I've read several things from Trafton now, and while I've enjoyed all of them, I do think that The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic is my favorite so far. It just takes all her humor and the aspects of her writing that I love and then gives a full book of that. I'll also point out that there are some really good illustrations by Brett Hellquist. I think there's about one per chapter, and they pair really well with Trafton's writing style. Hellquist is a really good illustrator, and I really enjoyed getting to see what illustration would be in each chapter. So you have some that are just character illustrations like this one, and then you have others that are more full scenes like this one. And that was just a fun addition. I would highly recommend this book to anyone who's wanting a fun and funny, lighthearted fantasy book to read. It's also pretty short, only 340 pages of large print, so it's not a big time commitment either. This is also a great book to let your kids read or read with them, as it teaches lots of great lessons, but also has a story that will be engaging for them. I hope you enjoyed this review of The Rise and Fall of Mount Majestic, and will consider picking this book up and giving it a read, because it really is fantastic. Bye!